Some promises survive even when the world says they are gone. Ethan Walker had stopped believing in miracles somewhere around month 14 of searching. Before that, he had believed harder than most people thought reasonable. He checked shelters 3 states away, called retired handlers, paid private investigators with money he did not really have, followed anonymous tips that turned into dead ends, abandoned barns, mistaken identities, and dogs that looked almost right until they turned their heads and became strangers again. But after 2 years, grief changed shape. It stopped feeling sharp and started feeling permanent. Like weather. Like something you carried because setting it down no longer seemed possible. Which was why Ethan nearly drove past the place without stopping. The sign outside looked harmless enough. Colorado Canine Recovery Center. Faded blue paint. Rust climbing the fence line. Empty gravel lot with only 3 parked trucks sitting beneath gray winter clouds. Somebody had scribbled over part of the sign years ago, leaving scratches that looked more angry than accidental. Ethan barely noticed it at first. He had been driving home from another dead lead 2 counties over, one hand on the steering wheel, coffee gone cold somewhere around sunrise. Another wasted trip. Another, someone saw a German shepherd matching the description. Another disappointment waiting quietly inside his truck beside the old military leash he still carried under the passenger seat. Funny thing about hope. It got heavier the longer you carried it alone. He almost kept driving. Then something caught his attention near the back fence. Not movement exactly. More like instinct. The kind combat trained into people until ignoring it stopped feeling natural. Ethan slowed the truck. Gravel cracked beneath the tires. Beyond the chain-link fencing, near a storage building, sat several outdoor enclosures. Most looked empty. One had a dog laying silently near the corner. Thin. Motionless. Head lowered. Ethan should have left right there. Plenty of places kept rescue animals. Plenty of old German shepherds looked tired. But something about the way the dog sat felt wrong. Too still. Too alert beneath exhaustion. Like waiting had become part of survival. Ethan parked without fully understanding why. Wind moved cold across the property, while distant mountains disappeared beneath heavy clouds threatening snow later that evening. Nobody greeted him when he stepped out. No barking. No employees. No welcome signs. Just silence stretched strangely across the property. That bothered him immediately. Places with dogs usually sounded alive. This place sounded forgotten. He walked slowly toward the fenced area, boots crunching gravel beneath slow steps. The closer he got, the more details started settling into place. German shepherd. Male. Black and tan coat dulled beneath dirt and neglect. Thinner than healthy. Old scars near the shoulder. One ear nicked slightly. Ethan stopped walking. His chest tightened before logic caught up. No. Could not be. Absolutely not. 2 years changed animals. Changed memory too. People saw what they wanted after enough grief. He knew that. Still, he moved closer. The dog remained laying still inside the metal enclosure, head low against the concrete floor. Then Ethan noticed something else. The posture. Military stillness. Controlled awareness even while resting. Familiar somehow in ways impossible to explain. He swallowed hard and crouched slightly near the fence. "Hey, buddy," he said quietly. No reaction. Just slow breathing. Tired breathing. Ethan glanced toward the tag attached outside the enclosure. Empty. No name listed. No paperwork visible. Strange. Something about this place felt increasingly wrong. He stood there another few seconds before instinct moved faster than thought. Old habits. Old memories. He pressed 2 fingers briefly to his lips. Then gave one short whistle. Sharp. Specific. Military command whistle. The kind nobody else used. The sound barely finished echoing before everything changed. The dog froze. Completely. Head lifted instantly. Ears moved forward. Eyes widened. For one impossible second, the entire world seemed to stop moving. Then slowly, shakily, the German shepherd stood. Ethan forgot how to breathe. Because even after 2 years, even thinner, even broken down by something terrible, he knew those eyes. Amber. Intelligent. Loyal in a way that once crossed oceans beside him. The dog stumbled forward toward the fence too quickly, front paws slipping slightly against concrete before stopping inches away. Ethan's hands shook before he even realized it. "No," he whispered quietly. "No way." The German shepherd stared at him for half a second. Then something deeper than recognition moved across the animal's face. Relief. Pure relief. A sound escaped him then. Not barking. Not whining. Something softer. Like grief breaking open after waiting too long. Ethan swallowed hard enough it hurt. "Rex?" he whispered. The reaction hit instantly. Tail movement. Small at first, then stronger. Eyes locked completely onto Ethan like two missing years disappeared all at once. Ethan crouched lower beside the cage, breath unsteady now in ways combat never caused. "Buddy," he said quietly, voice almost breaking. "I have been looking for you." Rex pushed closer immediately, nose pressing hard against cold metal bars like distance itself suddenly became unbearable. Ethan reached one trembling hand toward him instinctively, then stopped, because something cold settled sharply in his chest. The collar was gone. Military markings gone. Fur thinner. Fresh scars near the neck. And despite recognition, despite relief, Rex kept glancing nervously toward the building behind him like something inside still scared him. Ethan stood slowly. Calm face. Seal instincts back now. Something was wrong here. Deeply wrong. And for the first time in 2 years, grief gave way to something colder. Determination. The reunion should have felt impossible. Instead, it felt unfinished. Ethan stayed crouched beside the cage while cold Colorado wind moved through the property, carrying the sharp metallic smell of rust and wet concrete. Rex had not looked away once. Not for a second. Even now, after 2 years missing, the German Shepherd remained locked onto Ethan like losing him again had become the one thing he could not survive twice. Ethan slowly reached through the bars. Careful. Patient. The way handlers learned to move with injured military dogs after missions. Rex stepped closer immediately, pressing his nose hard against Ethan's palm before lowering his head briefly beneath his hand. Familiar. Too familiar. Ethan swallowed hard. Combat taught men how to survive explosions, exhaustion, fear. Nobody taught them what to do when grief suddenly stood alive in front of them. "You are really here," Ethan whispered quietly. Rex let out another soft sound low in his throat, tail moving slowly now, cautious but real. Yet something still felt wrong. Every few seconds, the dog's ears shifted nervously toward the building behind him. Alert. Watching. Waiting. Fear mixed strangely with recognition. That unsettled Ethan immediately. Rex had once crossed combat zones without hesitation. Gunfire never rattled him. Chaos never shook him. But this looked different. Controlled fear. Learned fear. The kind something teaches over time. Ethan stood slowly and scanned the property again. Still too quiet. No office lights. No workers. No rescue volunteers. No barking. No sound except chain link fencing rattling softly against winter wind. Rescue centers were messy, loud, busy. This place felt hidden, forgotten on purpose. Ethan walked toward the nearby office building first, boots scraping gravel while Rex followed his movement from inside the enclosure without blinking. The front door was locked. Hour sign missing. Curtains drawn. Strange. He knocked anyway. Nothing. Knocked harder. Silence. Then finally movement somewhere inside. Slow footsteps. A deadbolt unlocking. The door cracked open halfway. A man in his late 50s stood there wearing a stained jacket and tired expression that looked annoyed before concerned. "Can I help you?" he asked flatly. Ethan kept his voice calm. "Yeah," he said evenly. "I think one of your dogs belongs to me." The man frowned immediately. "We rescue abandoned animals here." Ethan held eye contact. Military K9. German Shepherd. Name's Rex. Something shifted across the man's face too quickly to miss. Small. Fast. But there. Recognition. Then guardedness. "That dog came in through private surrender," he said quickly. "No owner listed." Ethan did not blink. "Funny," he replied calmly. "Because I spent 2 years looking for him after the military reported him missing." Silence stretched for half a second too long. The man crossed his arms. "You got paperwork?" Ethan almost laughed. "You got paperwork?" The tension shifted instantly. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough to make instincts wake up again. Navy SEAL instincts never really disappeared. They only slept until something felt off. And right now, everything felt off. Ethan glanced past the man into the building. Dark hallway. Filing cabinets. Security monitor near a desk turned halfway away from view. "Look," the man said, voice tightening slightly. "We are closed today. If you think that dog is yours, leave your number." Ethan looked back toward Rex's enclosure. The German shepherd stood now, fully standing, still watching him, still nervous. But the second Ethan moved even slightly away from the cage, Rex started pacing. Fast, uneasy, like separation itself scared him now. That hit Ethan harder than expected. Rex never paced. Rex used to wait calmly through helicopters, storms, long deployments. This looked like trauma, like abandonment carved deep into instinct. Ethan lowered his voice carefully. Why is he in a cage outside? The man hesitated. Behavioral issues. Ethan almost smiled at that. Almost. No, he said quietly. That dog has military obedience training. Somebody trained him to trust commands under combat pressure. The man shifted uncomfortably. Listen, sir. Ethan cut him off softly. What happened to his collar? No answer. What happened to his records? Silence again. Why are there no intake forms? The man's expression hardened now. You should leave. And there it was. The sentence that changed everything. Because innocent people explained things. Guilty people shut doors. Ethan looked once more toward Rex. The dog stood perfectly still now except for one thing. He kept glancing nervously toward a side storage building farther back on the property. Over and over again. Same direction. Same reaction. Not random. Intentional. Like he remembered something there. Ethan noticed immediately. Rex had always communicated through patterns. Training created that language. Small signals. Repeated focus. Quiet warnings. Something inside that building mattered. Ethan stepped backward slowly. Calm face. Controlled breathing. All right, he said evenly. I will go. The man relaxed too quickly. Mistake. Ethan turned toward the parking lot, hands in his jacket pockets, expression unreadable. But halfway to his truck, he looked back once more. Rex stood pressed against the cage watching him leave. No barking. No panic. Just trust. Complete trust. The kind that said one thing without words. You came back. Ethan stopped walking for 1 second longer than necessary, then quietly reached for his phone. Before dialing, he looked straight toward the camera in his dashboard reflection and muttered softly. And if you are enjoying this story so far, make sure to like and subscribe so you do not miss the next unforgettable journey. Then his expression hardened again, because after 2 years of grief, Ethan suddenly realized something terrifying. Rex had not just survived. Rex had been waiting for someone to finally ask the right questions. The parking lot looked empty when Ethan finally started the truck. But empty did not mean harmless. Years in the military taught him that silence could hide more than noise ever revealed. He sat behind the wheel without driving away, engine humming softly beneath cold gray skies, while the old facility stayed motionless in the distance. Colorado mountains stretched behind it, sharp and frozen beneath gathering clouds, the kind of weather that promised snow before dark. Ethan rested one hand against the steering wheel and looked toward the fenced enclosures again. Rex had not moved. Even from this distance, the German shepherd remained standing near the cage door, eyes locked exactly where Ethan's truck sat parked. Waiting, watching, trusting. That hurt more than Ethan expected. 2 years. 2 years believing grief had already buried something that somehow still survived. He reached beneath the passenger seat and pulled out an old weathered object wrapped carefully in cloth. Rex's original military collar, faded from age now, still carrying scratches from training exercises overseas. Ethan had kept it through every move, every bad night, every moment people quietly suggested it was time to let go. Funny thing about military handlers. They learned quickly that dogs were not equipment. They were partners, brothers in different bodies. You did not replace them. You carried them, even after loss. Ethan stared at the collar for a long second before setting it gently back down. Then he reached for his phone. First call went to someone he trusted more than paperwork. Mason, Ethan said after the line answered. I found him. Silence. Then confusion. Found who? Ethan glanced toward the fence again. Rex. Another pause. Longer this time. That is not funny, Mason said quietly. Former Marine, K-9 trainer. One of the few people who understood what Rex meant. I am not joking. Ethan kept his voice steady. He is alive. The silence afterwards sounded heavier. Where? Ethan looked toward the rusted sign again. Someplace calling itself Colorado Canine Recovery Center. Mason exhaled sharply. Never heard of it. That makes 2 of us. Ethan leaned slightly closer to the windshield. Something feels wrong here. He explained everything. The cage. The missing paperwork. The scars. The nervous behavior. The man at the office. The way Rex kept watching a side building. Mason stayed quiet for several seconds after hearing everything. Then came the sentence Ethan expected least. You said he looked scared? Ethan frowned slightly. Yeah. Rex was bomb-proof. Mason replied quietly. That dog once sat calm during helicopter extractions while buildings shook around him. Ethan already knew that, which made today worse. Fear like that did not come from nowhere. It came from repetition, memory, something learned over time. I think he is trying to show me something, Ethan said finally. Mason sighed softly, then listened to him. The line ended after promises to dig through records and call back. Ethan stayed still another minute before stepping out of the truck again. Cold air hit harder now. Snow threatened somewhere above the mountains. Time mattered. The office stayed dark. No movement. No workers outside. Yet the longer Ethan watched, the stranger things felt. Near the back fence sat several delivery crates stacked beneath tarps. No rescue logos. No organization markings. Strange for an animal center. Stranger still? A security camera aimed not toward the front entrance, but toward the side storage building Rex kept glancing at. Ethan noticed details automatically. Military instincts never retired. They adapted. He walked casually along the fence line again, pretending to study the property while keeping his movements relaxed. Calm. Ordinary. The last thing he wanted was attention. Rex noticed him immediately, tail moving once, then stopping. Alert now. Focused. Ethan slowed near the enclosure again. Easy, buddy, he said quietly. I am not leaving. Rex pressed closer against the fencing, ears twitching nervously again toward the same storage building. Once. Twice. 3 times. Pattern confirmed. Not random. Ethan crouched lower, following the dog's gaze carefully. Small metal structure. Window covered. Lock on the side entrance. No signs. No visible reason a rescue facility needed private storage that hidden. Ethan narrowed his eyes slightly. Then something shifted. A truck door slammed somewhere behind the building. Rex reacted instantly. Full body stiff. Head lowered. Ears pinned briefly. Fear. Real fear. Ethan felt something cold settle deeper in his chest. Because for the first time since arriving, he recognized something familiar in Rex's posture. Not fear of pain. Anticipation. Like the dog already knew what came next when certain sounds happened. Like routine had taught him consequences. Ethan stepped closer to the cage. Hey, he said softly. Look at me. Rex turned instantly. Command response still perfect despite everything. That almost broke Ethan more than the reunion itself. Somebody neglected him. Somebody frightened him. But nobody erased the training. Nobody erased loyalty. Ethan reached carefully through the bars again. This time Rex lowered his head directly into Ethan's hand without hesitation. Full trust. Immediate. Like 2 missing years simply stopped matching the second Ethan returned. Ethan swallowed hard. I am getting you out, he whispered quietly. Whatever happened here ends today. Then Rex did something strange. Slowly, carefully, the German shepherd turned his head again toward the storage building. Then back to Ethan. Then back again. Intentional. Almost urgent. Ethan stared for 1 second longer than necessary, because suddenly one thought settled sharply into place. Rex was not just waiting to be rescued. Rex wanted him to see something. The longer Ethan stayed near the enclosure, the more certain he became that Rex was trying to communicate something. Not through barking. Not panic. Through patterns. Military dogs learn differently than ordinary pets. They watched. Repeated. Directed attention. Years ago, during deployments overseas, Rex had once alerted Ethan to hidden dangers the same exact way. A look. A pause. Repeated focus toward one place. Quiet urgency. The dog did not waste energy unless something mattered. And right now, that storage building mattered. Snow started falling lightly by late afternoon, soft flakes drifting through cold Colorado air while dark clouds swallowed more of the mountain skyline. The facility somehow felt even quieter now. Too quiet. Ethan leaned casually against the fence for another minute, pretending to scroll his phone while watching movement around the property. Nobody entered. Nobody left. Yet twice, he noticed the office man step outside briefly and glance toward the storage building before disappearing again. Nervous behavior. Protective behavior. Like somebody guarding more than supplies. Ethan hated coincidences, especially ones that repeated. Rex suddenly stood again near the enclosure door. Head tilted slightly toward the back lot. Then back to Ethan. Same signal. Again. Ethan exhaled slowly. All right, he muttered quietly. I see it. He walked back toward the truck, moving slow enough not to draw attention. The second he opened the driver's side door, old habits returned automatically. Flashlight, gloves, small notebook, phone fully charged, calm breathing. Years in special operations trained people to think in layers. Observe first, move second, react last. He circled casually around the far side of the property where stacked equipment partially blocked visibility from the office building. Snow covered most footprints quickly now. Wind picking up. Good for concealment. Bad for time. Near the storage building, details started feeling stranger. No business signs. No supply labels. Thick lock on the door. Fresh tire tracks nearby despite everything else looking neglected. And perhaps strangest of all, sound. Faint movement inside. Not loud. Not human conversation exactly. More like nervous shifting. Uneasy movement. Ethan stopped beside the wall and listened carefully. Another sound followed. Soft scratching. Then silence. His jaw tightened slightly. Something inside did not feel right. He moved carefully toward the covered window and brushed away a small layer of frost near the edge. Dark inside at first. Then shapes slowly appeared. Crates. Storage shelves. Metal fencing. And movement. Ethan froze completely. More dogs. At least 5. Maybe 6. Different breeds. Different sizes. Thin. Nervous. Quiet in ways scared animals often became after too much uncertainty. No proper bedding. Minimal space. Some pacing. Some curled tightly in corners. None looked aggressive. Just tired. Waiting. Ethan felt something cold settle deeper in his chest. Rescue center? No. This looked hidden. Controlled. Wrong. One German shepherd near the far wall lifted his head weakly. Another older Labrador barely moved at all except slow blinking. No food bowls visible near several kennels. Ethan stepped back from the window slowly, pulse steady now in the dangerous way calm sometimes arrived before anger. Because suddenly Rex made sense. The fear, the nervous glances, the repeated signals toward this exact building. He had not just wanted rescue. He wanted Ethan to see this. A truck engine suddenly sounded somewhere nearby. Ethan moved quickly behind stacked crates, just as an older pickup rolled toward the storage building. Same office man stepped out carrying paperwork and speaking quietly with another man wearing a dark jacket. Their voices carried faintly across the cold air. Shipment tomorrow morning, the second man muttered. We cannot keep extras here much longer. Shipment. Ethan narrowed his eyes instantly. Nobody described rescue animals like cargo. The office man shook his head. That shepherd caused problems. The military one. Ethan went perfectly still. Been weird since last week. The man continued quietly. Keeps reacting every time somebody whistles outside. Ethan felt something tighten sharply inside his chest. Rex remembered him. Even after 2 years. Even trapped here. Even frightened. The second man glanced toward the building. You sure nobody knows? The office man laughed quietly. People stop asking questions once the paperwork disappears. Ethan memorized every word. Calm. Controlled. Useful. Emotion came later. Evidence first. That was the rule. He quietly pulled out his phone and snapped careful photos from behind cover. License plate. Storage building. Faces. Kennels through the frosted window. Small details mattered. Small details won difficult fights. The men eventually disappeared back toward the office while snow thickened harder overhead. Ethan waited 5 more minutes before moving carefully away from the building. Back near the enclosure, Rex stood waiting exactly where Ethan left him. Still watching. Still trusting. Ethan crouched low near the fence again. This time something shifted inside him completely. Grief no longer sat in the driver's seat. Purpose did. You were trying to tell me, he whispered quietly. Rex stepped forward immediately, nose pressing through the fencing again. Ethan reached carefully against his face, fingers brushing worn fur near the scarred ear. You did good, he said softly. You always did good. Rex closed his eyes for half a second, leaning into the touch like remembering safety felt unfamiliar now. Ethan swallowed hard once before standing again. Snow covered the property faster. Darkness coming soon. But now he knew something bigger waited underneath all of this. Missing dogs. Hidden cages. Strange shipments. Vanishing paperwork. And somehow, after 2 years missing, Rex had just handed him the first real clue. Darkness settled across the mountains faster than expected. By 6:30, snow covered most of the property in a thin white layer, while weak security lights flickered across chain-link fencing and cracked pavement. Colorado winters moved quickly after sunset. Cold found every exposed surface. Silence found everything else. Ethan stayed parked nearly half a mile away beside an empty service road overlooking the facility. Truck lights off. Engine quiet. Patience mattered now. Emotion could wait. Evidence came first. Years in special operations had trained him for long nights exactly like this. Observe patterns. Learn routines. Wait until people stopped performing and started acting naturally. Rex changed everything, but discipline still mattered. Ethan sat with a notebook open across the passenger seat, recording details from memory while steam rose faintly from untouched coffee. 2 vehicles on property. 1 office worker. 1 unidentified man. Side storage building active. Multiple dogs hidden. Shipment mentioned for tomorrow morning. Missing paperwork. Security camera facing inward. Strange thing about investigations. Small details usually told bigger truths. His phone buzzed suddenly. Mason. Ethan answered immediately. Tell me something good, he said quietly. Mason exhaled hard through the speaker. I found records. Ethan straightened slightly. Go. Colorado Canine Recovery Center is registered as a non-profit animal rehabilitation organization, Mason said. But there is barely any public activity. No adoption events. No partnerships. Almost no online presence. Ethan frowned. Strange for any real rescue organization. Gets worse, Mason added quietly. I ran the executive name. And silence stretched briefly. Guy running it got investigated years ago, connected to private security contracts involving retired military dogs. Ethan felt something settle colder in his chest. Illegal. Never proven, Mason said. Case disappeared. Ethan looked through the windshield toward the distant facility lights glowing faintly through snowfall. Funny how often paperwork vanished when money showed up. What about Rex? Ethan asked after a pause. Mason hesitated. Official military report still says missing during overseas transport after extraction failure. Ethan stared silently ahead. Missing. Not dead. Missing. Somebody somewhere closed a file and moved on. But Rex had been alive the whole time, waiting in a cage. That thought sat heavier than anger. Because grief felt different when somebody stole years from it. You thinking what I am thinking? Mason asked carefully. Ethan nodded, even though nobody could see him. This was never random. Silence again. Then Mason said quietly, You need authorities. Ethan almost laughed softly at that. With what? He asked. Suspicion? Mason did not argue. They both knew how these things worked. Claims disappeared without proof. Evidence mattered, especially when powerful people hid behind paperwork. The call ended with one final promise. Mason would keep digging through records overnight. Ethan leaned back briefly against the seat, exhaustion pressing heavier now. He had not slept much in days. But every time tiredness tried winning, one image kept showing up again. Rex standing inside that cage. Thin. Nervous. Still recognizing one whistle after 2 years. Still trusting him completely. That made quitting impossible. Around 8 o'clock, movement returned at the facility. Ethan noticed lights flicker briefly inside the storage building. Then the office man stepped outside carrying a clipboard. Another truck arrived 10 minutes later. Different vehicle this time. No company logo. Dark windows. Quiet arrival. Ethan narrowed his eyes immediately. Nobody unloaded rescue supplies at night in weather like this. He quietly reached for binoculars from beneath the back seat. Old habit. Through the lenses, details sharpened quickly. The second man from earlier exited the truck alongside someone Ethan had not seen before. Younger. Mid-30s maybe. Baseball cap. Dark coat. They spoke briefly near the storage building before unlocking the side entrance. One man disappeared inside. A few seconds later, movement. Dogs. Ethan saw shapes being checked one by one. Papers exchanged. Crates shifted. His jaw tightened slightly. This looked organized. Routine. Not rescue work. Then something unexpected happened. Near Rex's enclosure, movement caught his attention. The German Shepherd had stood up suddenly. Fully alert. Watching the building again. Watching Ethan's direction too. Then Rex did something familiar enough to stop Ethan cold. He sat. Straight posture. Focused eyes. Waiting. Military-ready position. Command posture. The exact same posture Ethan taught him before missions overseas. Memory hit hard and fast. Desert heat. Dust. Helicopters. Rex sitting exactly like that beside temporary barracks while waiting for instructions. 2 years gone, and somehow none of the trust disappeared. Ethan swallowed hard once before reaching for the old military whistle resting in the center console. He stared at it for several seconds. Part of him wanted to run back immediately. Cut the lock. Take Rex. Drive until mountains disappeared behind them. But another part knew better. Rex did not only lead him to himself. Rex led him to something bigger. And if Ethan left now, whatever happened inside that building would keep happening. To other dogs. Other families. More missing stories nobody questioned long enough. Snow thickened harder outside. Wind rising. Ethan looked once more through binoculars and suddenly noticed something new near the storage entrance. Small transport cages stacked near the wall. Fresh labels taped across the side. Numbers instead of names. No rescue center called Animals Inventory. Something was happening tomorrow morning. Something important. Ethan slowly reached for his phone and began recording everything he could see. Faces. Trucks. Timestamps. Movements. Calm breathing. Steady hands. Because after years of silence, purpose had finally returned. And somewhere beyond the falling snow, Rex still sat waiting exactly where Ethan left him, like he already knew something important. His partner had finally come back. Snow covered the roads by midnight. The mountains looked silent again from a distance, peaceful even. Funny thing about dangerous places. They often looked harmless to people standing far enough away. Ethan stayed inside the truck with the heater running low, parked just beyond sight of the facility, while darkness wrapped around everything except the occasional glow from security lights near the storage building. Most people would have gone home hours ago. Most people probably believed somebody else would handle it. But Ethan had spent too many years watching problems survive because good people assumed somebody else cared enough to act. And Rex was still in that cage. That part mattered most. Around 1 in the morning, movement finally slowed. One truck left. Office lights went dark. Snow covered fresh tire tracks quickly while cold wind pushed harder across empty roads. Ethan checked the time once, then stepped outside. Quiet. Controlled breathing. Same rhythm he used before difficult missions years ago. Observe. Plan. Move carefully. The facility looked abandoned now except for one small light near the office hallway. He stayed close to shadows near stacked fencing and maintenance equipment while snow muffled footsteps naturally. Good conditions for staying unnoticed. Bad conditions for mistakes. Near the storage building, Ethan stopped again beside the frosted window. Inside looked darker now. Still, until movement shifted softly near the far kennels. Dogs. Sleeping mostly. Some curled tightly against blankets too thin for winter. One older dog raised its head briefly before settling again. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. Nobody running a real rescue center treated animals like forgotten cargo. He reached for his phone again and quietly recorded more video through the glass. Kennels. Crates. Water bowls nearly empty. Small details. Evidence. Always evidence. Then something caught his attention near a metal filing cabinet pushed beside the interior office wall. Paperwork stacked carelessly. Shipping forms maybe. Hard to tell from outside. Ethan looked toward the security camera mounted near the roofline. Angle wrong. Blind spot near side entrance. Sloppy security. Somebody confident nobody would question them. He moved slowly toward the rear door. Locked. Heavy industrial padlock. Old. But nearby sat another thing most people missed. Electronic keypad beside the frame. Newer model. Strange combination. Old building. Modern access. Somebody cared what stayed hidden inside. Ethan crouched briefly and studied the keypad. More numbers. For keys more faded than the others. Pattern obvious enough. Years of field work made reading habits easier than technology sometimes. Before trying anything, he paused. Breathe first. Think second. Getting caught tonight helped nobody. Especially Rex. Then something unexpected happened. A soft sound drifted across the property. One sharp bark. Brief. Familiar. Ethan turned instantly toward the enclosures. Rex stood near the fencing watching directly toward him through snowfall. Alert. Waiting. Then the German shepherd glanced once toward the office building. Back to Ethan. Then toward the storage building again. Same pattern. Ethan narrowed his eyes slightly. Rex was signaling again. Not panic. Direction. The office. Ethan moved quietly around the side of the building and noticed something he missed earlier. A smaller exterior door partly hidden behind stacked bins. No security camera. No keypad. Just basic lock. Strange shortcut between buildings maybe. He tested the handle carefully. Locked. But near the frame sat something even stranger. Fresh muddy footprints despite snow covering everything else. Recent movement. Ethan stepped back slowly. Something bigger connected these buildings. He looked toward the office windows again. One light still on. Maybe records. Maybe computers. Maybe answers. His phone buzzed suddenly against his jacket pocket. Mason. Ethan answered immediately, but kept his voice low. Talk. Mason sounded tired. You need to hear this, he said quickly. I tracked financial records tied to that nonprofit. Ethan stayed still. And? Private payments, Mason replied. Large ones. Shell companies connected to private contractors. Mostly security and animal transport. Ethan frowned. Transport. Silence briefly. Then Mason said quietly. Ethan, I think they are moving trained dogs. Selling them. Military backgrounds make them valuable. Cold anger settled deeper this time. Not loud anger. Controlled anger. Worst kind. Gets stranger, Mason added. 3 other military K-9 cases show missing records over the last 4 years. Ethan looked slowly toward Rex's enclosure through the snow. 3 other dogs. More handlers. More families probably grieving something never actually gone. You need law enforcement, Mason said carefully. Ethan exhaled slowly. Not yet. Ethan, I need proof nobody can ignore. Silence stretched between them before Mason finally sighed. You always were stubborn. Ethan almost smiled at that. Almost. The call ended quickly. Snow thickened again. Wind sharper now. But something had changed inside Ethan completely. This stopped being about reunion hours ago. Rex had survived something terrible. But somehow, even trapped, even frightened, the dog still remembered his job. Protect. Alert. Lead his partner to the truth. Ethan looked toward the enclosure again. Rex still stood there watching him through falling snow. Waiting. Trusting. Then suddenly, headlights appeared far down the road. Another vehicle coming toward the property. Too late for rescue work. Too early for morning deliveries. Ethan stepped quickly back into shadow near the storage building and watched carefully. Because deep down, instinct already whispered something uncomfortable. Tonight might finally reveal what this place really was. The vehicle rolled through the falling snow slower than expected. Dark SUV. No markings. Headlights cutting sharp lines through white wind while tires crunched carefully across frozen gravel toward the back lot. Ethan stayed perfectly still behind stacked pallets near the storage building, breath controlled, posture steady. Years ago, stillness like this saved lives. Panic made noise. Patience revealed truth. The SUV stopped near the side entrance of the storage building instead of the office. That mattered immediately. Nobody dropping off rescue donations arrived after midnight through hidden entrances. One man stepped out first. Mid-40s maybe. Heavy coat. Gloves. Expensive boots that looked too clean for rescue work. Another person exited from the passenger side carrying paperwork inside a black case. Professional movement. Efficient. Familiar. Business, not charity. Ethan stayed low while snow collected across his shoulders. The office man appeared minutes later holding keys. No greetings. No smiles. Just quick conversation and nervous glances around the property. That alone told Ethan enough. Honest operations rarely acted like somebody was always watching. Then came the sentence that changed everything. This one ships first, the office man said quietly while pointing somewhere inside the storage building. Former military unit. High response training. Ethan's stomach tightened immediately. Rex. Had to be Rex. The second man nodded. Private client confirmed? Paid already, came the answer. Ethan felt something colder than anger settle into place. Calm. Focused. Dangerous calm. Somebody was selling military dogs like equipment. Like tools. Like loyalty came with a price tag. Snow thickened harder overhead, while Ethan quietly adjusted position near the side wall. Through the partially open storage door, he caught glimpses inside. Kennels. Papers spread across folding tables. Crates stacked carefully near transport equipment. One clipboard left visible long enough for him to notice numbers instead of names beside each animal listing. Inventory system. Clean. Organized. Intentional. Nothing accidental about this. Then movement near the enclosures caught his eye. Rex. Even from across the property, the German Shepherd stood fully alert now, body stiff beneath falling snow. Watching the storage building. Watching Ethan. Waiting. Something strange happened next. One of the men moved toward Rex's enclosure carrying a leash. Rex immediately stepped backward, ears lowered, tension visible in posture. Fear. Real fear. Ethan's jaw tightened harder. Because Rex had once trusted commands without hesitation. Fear like that did not come naturally to dogs trained through trust. Fear came from repetition. Bad repetition. The office man unlocked the enclosure slowly. Come on, he muttered impatiently. Rex stayed frozen, watching. Then suddenly, the German Shepherd turned his head slightly toward Ethan's direction. Just briefly. Small movement. But Ethan understood instantly. Same look from missions years ago. Alert. Ready. Waiting for command. That broke something open inside Ethan harder than expected. Because somehow, after everything, Rex still believed his partner would come back. Ethan stepped farther into shadow and quietly reached for his phone again. Recording on. Zoom steady. Faces. Audio. Conversations. Evidence. He caught enough now to matter. Clear references to payments. Shipments. Military dogs. Hidden operations. More than suspicion. Real proof. Then the younger man carrying paperwork suddenly said something that made Ethan stop breathing for half a second. What about the others? Office man shrugged. 3 already moved out this year. Nobody asks questions once records disappear. Ethan looked back toward the dark kennels inside the building. 3 military dogs. Maybe more. Families somewhere probably grieving partners they believed were gone forever. Just like him. Funny thing about grief. Sometimes it was not loss. Sometimes it was theft wearing silence as disguise. Wind shifted suddenly across the lot, carrying sound differently now. One metal object near Ethan shifted slightly against the pallets with a soft scrape. Tiny sound, but enough. One man near the SUV stopped moving. Turned slightly. You hear that? Ethan stayed perfectly still. No movement. No breathing louder than necessary. The second man shrugged. Probably the storm. But suspicion lingered. Office man grabbed a flashlight and moved slowly toward Ethan's direction. Problem. Immediate problem. Ethan glanced once toward the fencing. Distance to truck too far. Storage blind spot closer. But before he could decide, something unexpected happened. Rex barked once. Loud. Sharp. Immediate distraction. Every head turned instantly toward the enclosure. The office man cursed softly. That dog again. He turned away from Ethan's direction immediately and marched back toward the fencing. Enough, he muttered irritably. Ethan stayed frozen for another 5 seconds before slowly exhaling. Rex had done that on purpose. Again. Protecting him. Covering him. Just like overseas. Loyalty surviving even after 2 years inside a cage. The realization hit harder than words could explain. Near the enclosure, the office man clipped a leash onto Rex roughly and started pulling him toward the storage building. Rex resisted slightly, not aggressive, just unwilling. Nervous. Watching Ethan's direction one last time. Something inside Ethan shifted instantly. No hesitation left now. Tomorrow morning was too late. Rex would disappear again. Maybe forever. Ethan quietly stepped backward into deeper shadow and reached for his phone. One call. That was all. Local sheriff first. Federal Animal Crimes Division second. Military contact third. Evidence uploaded immediately. Backup coming if people moved fast enough. Then Ethan looked toward Rex again through the falling snow and quietly muttered something he had not said in over 2 years. Hold position, buddy, he whispered softly. I am coming for you. And somehow, even across distance, Rex stopped pulling against the leash for half a second. Like he remembered the command. Like trust never really left. Snow turned heavier just before dawn. Thick white wind covered fences, tire tracks, and rooftops until the entire property looked quieter than it deserved. Somewhere beneath all that silence sat cages, hidden paperwork, frightened dogs, and truths people hoped nobody would ever uncover. Ethan stayed inside the truck parked beyond the service road, engine running low while his phone lit the darkness beside him. 3 calls completed. Sheriff's Department. State Animal Welfare Investigators. Former military legal contact Mason trusted. Everything uploaded. Photos. Videos. License plates. Audio recordings. Timestamps. Enough proof to force questions. Maybe not enough for instant justice, but enough to stop somebody from quietly disappearing before sunrise. The sheriff had sounded skeptical at first. That changed after Ethan forwarded the footage from the storage building. Words like shipment and military training changed conversations quickly, especially when frightened animals sat inside locked facilities with no records. Ethan checked the clock again. 4:38 in the morning. Still dark. Still snowing. Still waiting. Waiting always felt longer when somebody you cared about stood on the other side of it. He looked again through binoculars toward the enclosures. Rex sat exactly where Ethan last saw him. Outside again now. No longer inside the storage building. The German Shepherd remained alert despite exhaustion, snow collecting lightly across his back while he watched the property with quiet patience. Every few minutes, he glanced toward the road, toward Ethan's direction. Still waiting. That part stayed difficult to explain. 2 missing years. Fear. Neglect. Yet somehow, trust survived all of it. Rex still believed Ethan would return because military dogs understood something most humans forgot. Loyalty was not temporary. Around 5:15, movement returned to the facility. Lights flickered on inside the office. Trucks started moving. 2 men emerged carrying paperwork and transport crates toward the storage building. Ethan adjusted binoculars again and immediately noticed something new. The crates looked ready for departure. Fresh labels attached. Blank tracking codes. No names. No rescue records. Just numbers. Inventory. Quiet anger settled deeper inside him. Dogs were family to somebody. Partners. Not cargo. Then came the moment Ethan had feared most. One man approached Rex's enclosure holding a leash again. Another carried paperwork behind him. Rex stood slowly, uncertain now. Watching. Nervous. The office man unlocked the gate. Come on, he muttered impatiently. Big payday today. Ethan felt his hands tighten slightly against the steering wheel. Not fear. Timing. Timing mattered. Too early and people ran. Too late and Rex disappeared again. Then finally, headlights appeared through snowfall from the distant road. One vehicle. Then another. Sheriff SUVs. Animal control transport. Quiet approach. No sirens. Smart. Ethan exhaled slowly for the first time in minutes. One deputy called him immediately. Walker. Yeah. Stay where you are, came the voice. We are moving in. Ethan looked again through binoculars. Deputies positioned carefully near entrances. One vehicle blocking the main road. Another circling toward the rear exit. Nobody leaving now. The office man had not noticed yet. Neither had the others. But Rex suddenly stood straighter. Ears forward. Watching the road. Then somehow, impossibly, he turned toward Ethan's direction again. Like he already knew something changed. The moment happened quickly after that. One sheriff vehicle pulled forward into the lot. Another blocked the exit. Flashing emergency lights finally cut through the snow. Confusion erupted instantly near the storage building. Men stopped moving. Papers dropped. Somebody shouted something Ethan could not hear through distance and weather. Deputies stepped out calmly. Controlled. Professional. Questions started fast. Hands visible. Stay where you are. Standard procedure. No chaos. No danger described. Just truth arriving all at once. Ethan stepped from the truck before realizing he already moved. Snow crunching beneath boots while cold air hit harder than before. Nobody stopped him near the enclosure. One deputy recognized him immediately. Walker. Ethan nodded once. Dog is mine. The deputy glanced toward Rex. Looks like he agrees. Because the second Rex saw Ethan walking closer, everything changed. The German Shepherd moved fast toward the fence. Tail moving harder now. Nervous, sounds escaping quietly from somewhere deep inside him. Not panic. Relief. Pure relief. Ethan crouched near the enclosure again while one deputy unlocked the gate carefully. Easy, the deputy said softly. Rex did not hesitate. The second space opened. The German Shepherd crossed it immediately and stopped directly in front of Ethan, like verifying something impossible finally became real. Ethan barely had time to kneel before Rex pressed hard against him, head against chest, shaking slightly beneath melting snow. Ethan wrapped both arms carefully around him without hesitation. Thin now, lighter than before, but alive, somehow still alive. Ethan swallowed hard once before whispering quietly near his ear. You waited for me. Rex stayed pressed close like distance itself no longer made sense. Nearby, Deputies moved animals safely from the storage building. More dogs than Ethan expected. Quiet, frightened, but alive. One investigator carried folders stacked thick with paperwork, hidden records, payments, transfer forms, evidence nobody could explain away anymore. Yet somehow, despite everything happening around him, Ethan only focused on one thing. Rex had survived long enough to come home. And somehow, against every impossible odd, he never stopped believing his partner would find him. 3 months later, the snow finally disappeared from the mountains. Spring came slowly to Ethan Walker's cabin outside Durango, Colorado, replacing frozen silence with moving rivers, pine-scented wind, and sunlight stretching longer across the porch every evening. Funny how healing worked. It rarely arrived all at once. Usually, it happened quietly while people were busy surviving ordinary days. The cabin looked different now, warmer somehow, not because anything expensive changed, just smaller things. A worn leash hanging by the front door again. Dog bowls near the kitchen. Muddy paw prints Ethan stopped bothering to clean immediately because somehow they made the place feel alive. Rex slept near the fireplace most mornings. Not because he was lazy, because for the first few weeks after rescue, sleep itself seemed difficult. Some nights, the German shepherd startled awake from sounds too small to matter. A door shutting too quickly, heavy footsteps, wind rattling old windows. Fear did not disappear overnight. Neither did trust. But healing happened anyway. Slowly, patiently. The first time Rex slept through an entire night without waking suddenly, Ethan noticed before sunrise. The dog lay stretched peacefully near the couch, breathing slow and steady beneath soft morning light. Ethan stood in the kitchen longer than necessary, just watching him. No cage. No fear. Just rest. Real rest. Funny thing about loyalty. Sometimes it survived places that should have destroyed it. The investigation made headlines quietly at first. Then louder. Sheriff reports uncovered illegal animal transfers hidden beneath nonprofit paperwork. Military-trained dogs moved through private sales using erased records and fake surrender documents. More animals recovered. More families contacted. 3 other handlers eventually learned something impossible. Dogs they believed gone forever had survived too. Ethan never enjoyed interviews much, but once reporters started asking questions, he agreed to speak publicly for one reason only. People needed to understand what loyalty looked like. One afternoon outside the county courthouse, cameras pointed toward him while Rex sat quietly beside his leg, calmer now, but still always close. A reporter asked the question everybody wanted answered. What made you keep looking after 2 years? Ethan glanced down at Rex first, then back toward the cameras. Because partners do not stop being family just because paperwork says they are gone. That sentence spread farther than he expected. Military groups shared it. Veteran organizations reposted it. Animal welfare programs called asking questions. Donations flooded toward legitimate rescues helping retired service dogs. Strange how truth sometimes traveled farther than anger ever could. Mason visited twice that spring. Both times Rex recognized his truck before it reached the driveway, tail moving faster than Ethan had seen in years. He looks good, Mason said quietly during one visit while standing near the porch. Ethan nodded once. He is getting there. Because that was the truth. Some scars faded slower than others. Rex still disliked closed spaces. Still hesitated near unfamiliar vehicles. Still watched doors carefully. But every week brought something small back. Confidence. Calm. Joy. One afternoon while hiking a trail near the ridge above Ethan's property, something happened neither of them expected. Ethan accidentally dropped the old military whistle while crossing loose rock near a stream. Small sound. Barely noticeable. But Rex stopped immediately. Turned. Picked it gently from the dirt. Then walked back, carrying it carefully the exact same way he used to after training sessions years ago. Ethan laughed quietly for the first time in longer than he could remember. Real laughter. The kind grief forgot how to make. Still got it, huh? He said softly. Rex stood taller somehow after that. Tail moving once before leaning lightly against Ethan's leg. Small moment. Big meaning. Because healing did not always arrive through grand speeches. Sometimes healing looked like remembering who you were before life got hard. Summer came closer after that. Longer days. Open windows. Quiet mornings drinking coffee on the porch while Rex rested nearby watching birds move across the yard. No cages. No locked gates. No fear waiting around corners. Just peace. One evening near sunset, Ethan sat outside while orange light stretched softly across the mountains. Rex rested beside him, older now, scarred still, but safe. Ethan reached down absent-mindedly and rubbed behind the familiar nicked ear. "You know," he said quietly, "I thought I was coming there to save you." Rex looked up slowly, ears relaxed now. Ethan smiled faintly toward the fading light. "Turns out," he whispered softly, "you might have saved me too." Wind moved gently through pine trees while the world stayed quiet around them. No cameras, no investigations, no headlines anymore. Just a man and his dog finally home. And maybe that was the lesson nobody expected from all of it. Loyalty does not disappear when life gets difficult. Real loyalty waits. Sometimes for months, sometimes for years. But when love remembers the way home, even broken things can learn to trust again. Rex lowered his head quietly against Ethan's boot while the last sunlight disappeared behind the mountains. No fear left in his eyes now, only peace. And after 2 impossible years apart, peace finally felt earned.